If I gave you a city map and dropped you there while driving, could you find your way? Suppose I drop you in a plane, give you a map, and indicate your general area. How long would it take you to find your location? Pay attention, there's a surprise in this video. Have you ever wondered how a plane manages to cross the entire world and arrive at the right place? At just the right speed and direction, parallel to the runway. Think about it, it's incredible. Today, this is easy because advanced communication and navigation systems are used. But in the past, this didn't exist. Pilots literally traveled with a map in their hands. If getting lost with a map in a city is hard, imagine how complicated it is while flying. And it's much worse because in World War I, when a pilot had to bomb a location, for example, a house where it had been discovered that military equipment was being stored. The pilot would be shown an aerial photograph that had previously been taken, either with hot air balloons or with another plane. And then, the plane assigned to bomb that location would have to recognize that house from above in order to bomb it. All responsibility was on the pilot. On many occasions, wrong locations were bombed, resulting in the deaths of dozens of people. There are now competitions where people attempt to mimic a navigator's skills, to try to put current pilots in the same situation as the early aviators found themselves in. From the Spanish Aeronautical Federation and the National Technical Commission of Ultralight Motorized, they invited me to the Olacau airfield to take part in a training session for a new competition format they've designed, and it's absolutely incredible. You've probably seen videos of typical Red Bull aerobatic competitions. Well, actually, there are many other categories that might not seem as flashy at first glance, but as you're about to see, they're actually super interesting. In particular, we were going to practice the new Air Sport Challenge category, which was created to adapt to new technologies. And it consists of crews made up of a pilot and a navigator receiving a map with the route they're going to follow. All crews must follow the same route. On this day, this was the route. To complete it, you can only use a compass, a stopwatch, and the paper map they give you. 1 hour before takeoff with the route marked. To be able to locate the plane and see which route it's taking, it's also mandatory to carry a tracking device inside the plane. If you forget this device, no one will know your location and you'll be disqualified. In the competition, all crews will have an entry time at the initial gate of the route and an exit time at the exit gate. Crews arriving early or late at the entry gate will be penalized, with penalties increasing for greater time inaccuracies. If a pilot goes off the established route because they got disoriented, they will also be penalized. And logically, the longer they are outside the limits, the greater the penalty will be. The competition may also set hidden time gates. This means that if it's stipulated, the perfect time would be 14 minutes. A rule of 3 is used to calculate when you should pass each part of the route based on the ideal time to complete a course. The hidden time gates mean that at a certain place there will be a gate that will monitor the time you've taken and compare it with the ideal time. Arriving early or late will result in a penalty. And as its name suggests, hidden time gate, the crews won't know where these time gates are, so they will have to try to keep perfect timing throughout the whole course. For example, if it is stipulated that the pilot Sergio must pass through the hidden gate at 12 hours, 30 minutes, and 5 seconds. Is there a penalty for each second of difference from that time when passing through the same gate? On top of all this, to make it even more complicated, it's possible that the zones may also have a variation in lane width. In other words, basically, the lane can become wider or narrower. You need to estimate this lane width using the map's proportions. With the map's scale, you can determine its width. Once the crews are up there, no one will say if they're in or out of the lane. They'll have to know it themselves by paying attention to the references they've previously taken. The most interesting thing is that everything is visualized live, interactively, from the ground, on a screen, both by the spectators and by the judges. And it's possible to see in real time on the map what each pilot is doing. And in addition, it will be possible to use onboard cameras to see both the outside and the inside of the planes. This lets you watch the navigator and pilot communicate and see their live discussions. Because looking at the map on the ground, when you're not under pressure, is very easy, but once you get up there, the whole situation changes completely. To add one last element of excitement, the organizers keep a few tricks up their sleeve. Something might be missing from the map. For instance, if this pond were left off, you could waste time searching for it to orient yourself. That's why the way to proceed is to note down reference points. Once you have the map on the ground, look for them while flying. If you don't find them, that's okay. Look for others. You shouldn't get obsessed with looking for something in particular, because while you're wasting time searching for it, the plane keeps moving forward, and that's when you get disoriented. This last part complicates the situation. What if a team argues because the navigator spots a house, but the pilot disagrees? That's when you know things aren't going well, and watching the onboard camera becomes entertaining. The map is given to each crew about an hour before they have to go through the starting gate of the course. They have to organize themselves to do the plane's safety checks, refuel, take off, and be right at the entry gate at the set time. Aviation safety is crucial, and people must arrive early enough to complete proper plane checks. We know accidents occur when things like this are skipped. The map format isn't just a basic Google Maps satellite photo, it also shows terrain contour lines. This is so that even when looking at the map, you can have a three-dimensional view. Because, for example, when you see something like this, you would know that this is actually a mound and you could use it as a reference. The crews will have all that time until they take off to take the necessary references on the map and be able to mark them down. Ideally, split the route into sections of about 15 seconds each. This way, you could take ground references at that frequency and check that you're on time. But the most curious thing of all is that they won't have any information about how the winds are once they're up there. As you can imagine, having a headwind or tailwind makes a big difference. This is another reason why regularly taking references is important. With a strong headwind pushing you back, you'd reach each 15-second reference point late and use more engine power. And the opposite, with a tailwind, you'd get there faster and notice the wind pushing you, so you'd slow down. I did this test with Iago Osset, the air navigation race world runner-up. He's a real expert, and I saw firsthand how hard it is to always know your location. Until now, I've mapped out the course for you. But when you're in the air, there's no course. You're flying, and you have to have the route marked in your head from what you saw before. I assure you it's not easy, though that's what the navigator does. Reminds the pilot. Where are the reference points? Does he need to go right, left, or speed up for a headwind, etc.? The starting gate was the roundabout, and since we arrived early, Iago did something to waste time so we could enter on schedule. During this stretch, Iago was pointing out the reference points that we had previously discussed on the map when we were on the ground. Because I was really focused on filming, not on guiding him, so yes, Iago was doing both the pilot and the navigator's job at the same time. For example, we flew over the industrial park visible on the map where you could clearly see the water reservoirs. This was the first competition category, but then we were practicing for another event, precision landings. This category is about getting the lowest possible score, meaning the one with the fewest points wins, since everyone starts from 0 points. And the worse your landing was, the more points you would get, so the points are like penalties. The runway has to be painted in the following way, assuming this is the landing direction. 2 lines would be painted to mark off an area of about 2 meters. This is called the faith line, since landing here gives 0 points, making it the perfect landing. The problem is that touching down with the wheels before this first line means the biggest penalty, 800 points. The next larger area is Alpha, worth 200 points. After that is Bravo, where you'll get 400 points. The next one, Charlie, 600 points, and the last one, Delta, which will add 800. If you notice, touching before the faith line has the same penalty as touching the last zone, which is why it's called the faith line. Iago is also the World Precision Landing Championship runner-up. He explained it's best to aim for the alpha zone, not the faith line, because it's easy to fall short. That would be the biggest penalty. Often those 3 or 4 meters aren't up to the pilot. Turbulence at the time can cause the plane to drop. That's why you should always aim for alpha. If you fall short, you'll be in the faith zone and get the smallest penalty. It may seem simple, but when you're in the plane, I guarantee you can't see anything at all. You can't see the lines here as we descend. I kind of knew where the lines were because people were right next to them to see where we were touching down on the runway. In fact, there's a joke that this category, precision landings, is like aircraft carrier landings for regular people. Also, Yago was explaining to us that there are two ways to make the approaches. The first is that the glide path matches exactly the point where you want to touch down on the runway, right from the start, from the moment you begin your descent. That is, you need to have the landing planned out from way up high. However, the second way is to descend until you're flying parallel to the ground, just a few centimeters above it. And by knowing the plane's speed very well and roughly its stall speed, you calculate so that the plane loses all lift right at the correct line. He called this the minimum safe speed since you're flying near stall speed, but being just above the ground, the plane would simply land if it stalled. Watching it from the ground from a close distance is a really good experience because you can perfectly see with your own eyes how the plane gradually loses speed and falls. But be careful, because there's one thing you should never do under any circumstances.
Something extremely important, burn it into your memory. Never ever, never ever do this.
This means that you should never, in order to touch down on the runway as soon as possible, lower the nose of the plane because that can lead to the collapse of the landing gear. If the nose gear touches the runway before the main gear, you will also receive a penalty. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments. See you next time.